Well, breaking news today, a minor amount, which to me, no amount is minor, but a minor amount of radioactive material specifically used for calibrating scanners at the Nazha Cancer Center has been reported missing in New Jersey. It's been missing, by the way, since early December. This incident has coincided with increased drone activity in the area, prompting concerns and investigations by local authorities. Although the material poses what they deem as a low risk to the public, which I deem as a high risk, the situation has raised questions about security protocols and government transparency. I think one of the reasons why everybody is so concerned is because we've had a flood of tens of millions of illegal immigrants coming across our border, many of which at this point we know actually might be terrorists. And so some of them happen to be terrorists, and then there's many of them that actually might be a terrorist. And just judging by what we know about who's come across the border already, and judging by what we know of who may have come across the border, the fact that there's nuclear fluids on the loose and people are actually out basically able to go in and search for it is a big deal. Just to set the whole story up, you guys know in recent weeks, the skies over New Jersey and neighboring states at this point have been the stage for perplexing series of events, capturing public attention, sparking widespread speculation. Unidentified drones have been reported hovering over various parts of the state, including sensitive areas such as military installations and nuclear facilities. Adding to the intrigue, a container of radioactive material used for calibrating medical scanners was reported missing in early December. While authorities have not confirmed any connection between these incidences, the occurrence has led to a flurry of theories and concerns from officials, mayors, senators, and residents alike. Now, here's a detail of the timeline starting in mid-November 2024, which actually predates the container of missing radioactive fluid. Residents across New Jersey, as well as parts of New York and Pennsylvania, begin reporting sightings of large, unidentified drones, primarily during nighttime hours. Why it's at nighttime, I don't know. These drones are described as having bright lights and flying in coordinated patterns. Despite numerous reports and videos, the origins and purposes of these drones remain unknown. On December 2nd, 2024, a container of radioactive material, specifically germanium-68, which is used for calibrating PET scanners, goes missing during transit from the Nazha Cancer Center in Newfield, New Jersey. The empty and damaged container is later found, and the radioactive source remains unaccounted for. That's according to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. In December 2024, Belleville Mayor Michael Melham speculates that the missing radioactive material may be linked to the recent drone sightings, suggesting that the drone could be searching for the lost source. This theory, while unconfirmed, adds to public concern and media attention. Now, experts in aviation and security have weighed in on the mysterious drone sightings, some suggesting that the drone size and coordinated flight patterns indicate that they are not typical hobbyist devices. John Ferguson of Saxon Aerospace actually speculated that these drones might be attempting to detect radioactive material, which is getting reactions from high-profile individuals and creating concern. It does remain speculative because we actually don't have any evidence other than I saw the NYPD got one of them that had crashed. Maybe some of you guys seen that, and they were holding it, and so it was like a pretty big drone. But the convergence of all of these events are obviously leading to widespread speculation, including theories about foreign surveillance, unauthorized drone operations, potential threats to critical infrastructure. Media coverage has amplified public concern, with some reports suggesting more sinister motives behind the activities. For example, television personality Bethany Frankel shared insider knowledge of the mysterious New Jersey drones, suggesting that they could be sniffing out something dangerous. Let me see if I can find that real fast, and we'll go back to what this mayor is saying. Bethany Frankel drones. I'm just going to Google it, put it on YouTube real fast. Here we go. Let's watch what she's.
You're going to think I'm nuts, but why should today be any different than any other day? I know this guy whose father worked with the Pentagon and NASA and like secret projects, and he has been messaging me that he will never forgive himself if he doesn't tell the people that he knows that for a month he's been watching this situation. And now, several days ago, before it became a discussion in the mainstream media that these drones are ours and that they could very possibly be sniffing out something very dangerous, some missing dangerous W from the war, and that areas that coincide with where the drones have been seen have spiked in radiation. So he said, it's time to think about where I am. And
you know, based on what she's saying, this official saying to her, basically off record, what do you read between the lines? Somebody stole some radioactive material from a variety of sources, including from a medical device, and they're planning to do a nuclear bomb in New York City. That's what I'm hearing.
And that I might want to go somewhere with my daughter. So like for me, you know, we blow things off and we think nothing's going to happen, but things do happen. I remember sitting in my car with my driver who said to me months before I even knew what the words global pandemic meant, I think there's going to be a global pandemic. I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, if he had bet the markets, he would have been a billionaire. So I'm just listening to this guy and watching. And now Trump, who's hanging out with a lot of billionaires who have a lot of money for research, is also finding out that these are ours. And what were the government's choices? A, tell us that that's what they're doing and widespread panic and pandemonium, or B, do what they're doing. But something is wrong because otherwise they would eliminate them. And everyone's being very cagey. So what do you think?
Yeah, I want to know. Put it in the chat. What is it that you think? Let's listen to what the mayor says.
There is growing concern and a demand for answers about the mysterious drones hovering over the tri-state area. In New Jersey, the flying objects have been spotted over residential neighborhoods, restricted sites, even near President-elect Donald Trump's home and critical infrastructure.
Belleville Mayor Michael Mellum says the drone sightings are creating anxiety in his town, and he's looking for answers. And he joins us this morning right here on Good Day New York. Thank you for joining us, Mayor. You know, President-elect Trump says that the Biden administration knows what's going on. Our government knows what's going on. You're the mayor of of Bellevue. What do you know?
We know very little. About 6 days ago, there was an unprecedented briefing with every single mayor in the state of New Jersey, along with every member of our state legislature. We learned exactly at that time what the state knows, which was very little. Since then, information has not been forthcoming. And it's this lack of transparency, in my opinion, that's doing nothing but fueling conspiracy theories online.
Do you have any idea?
So there's 564 mayors in New Jersey. By the way, this happens to be one of them. He was saying, listen, they called together every single member of New Jersey government, including all the mayors and state legislator. They told us what they knew, which was nothing. Listen, if you're a government official and you're in New Jersey and you're being briefed by the government about what's going on, and they actually are able to tell you nothing, that is a pretty bad place to be. Now, listening to what Bethany Frankel was saying, she's the one, I think, that I've heard that has a theory that makes the most sense out of anything. She said it without saying it, that somebody stole a bunch of radioactive material. They're planning to use it in a radioactive way to cause mass destruction to highly populated parts of the United States of America. That's what she basically said. In other words, get out of where you're at right now. There's a reason why all those drones are there. Donald Trump was supposed to be in New Jersey at his Bedminster Golf Club. He canceled his trip. And there's a reason he canceled his trip. I don't think it was because of the drones. He made a great point when he was talking about this on Truth Social. He said if these drones didn't belong to the United States government, they would have already shot them out of the air. So the fact that they know who they are, that they belong to the United States government, positions them in a place to know that they're there. They're just not comfortable sharing with the United States public the reason why they have them. What a horrible thing for us as citizens to have to sit here, process, and deal with, that the United States government actually knows that there's a tremendous threat that is incoming, and they haven't warned us about it at all.
Idea what it could be? Or which side it could be, where it's coming from?
Yeah, I can tell you what it's not. We know for a fact it's not little green men. And more than likely, it's not a foreign adversary, because they would be able to figure out how to turn off the blinking lights. These drones are huge. We had a mayor yesterday on the call with the White House telling them that he had 6-foot drones hovering over his house. Yet they continue to tell us, we don't know what we're talking about. It's misidentification. Certainly, there's some misidentification probably going on, but I could assure you that we are seeing drones in New Jersey all over the place.
All right. So Bethany Frankel, I know she's not like, the New York Times, but she says that she has like some kind of contact at the Pentagon.
At this point, I trust Bethany Frankel more than the New York Times.
And that it has something to do with radioactive material in New Jersey. What are you hearing?
So here's what I know. I know that we were told by our state police that we have assets over our critical infrastructure. Now, depending on your point of view, that's either concerning or comforting. I think it's comforting because it's probably us listening and watching. We also know that we have drones that are flying in a grid-like pattern. In my opinion, they're looking for something. What might they be looking for? Well, potentially, we're aware of a threat that came in through Port Newark. Maybe that's radioactive material. There was and there is an alert that's out right now that radioactive material in New Jersey has gone missing on December 2nd. It was a shipment. It arrived at its destination. The container was damaged and was empty. So potentially we're looking for that.
Stop right there, Mayor, because that's very important information. And that came from a credible source.
That came from the U.S. government.
And so it's missing?
Missing.
And they think it's in New Jersey, or it could be anywhere?
It was lost in New Jersey in transit. And again, this is just an example of what I think that we're sniffing for. I think we do have the assets that can go up and fly around and sniff things, which is why we're not seeing the uptick we used to see in Belleville anymore. It's kind of moving, but we're seeing alerts that it's happening now in Pennsylvania.
And that's right about the time that the drone sightings began, right?
Yeah, drone sightings began about 4 weeks ago.
Okay, so when you take a look at this, if this information is indeed credible, why wouldn't the government say, it's us?
That's the crazy part about this. We've gotten very little information. Even yesterday on that call with the White House, literally mayors were told, you guys are seeing things. There's no credibility to this. We have one mayor, like I said, had drones.
The White House is telling the mayors that they're seeing things, that they're making it up. Joe Biden has mashed potatoes for brains.
For his house. I mean, we're no longer going to stand for not hearing the truth. I mean, our state government is failing us. They're not getting the answers from the federal government. And even though yesterday they told us that there's nothing to see here, today there's a top secret briefing going on in Congress. Well, what are they being told that we weren't told yesterday?
Real quick, did you know yesterday when you were on that call about this missing radioactive activity or merchandise, or did you know that this morning after the call?
I was made aware of it yesterday morning. I did raise my hand. We weren't allowed to speak. I did raise my hand, was not called on to get that question answered.
So apparently it is concerning. Even the president-elect, who I'm sure gets some kind of briefings on things, he says he's not going to his home in Bedminster, right?
Yeah, I listened to him yesterday. He no doubt gets the same exact briefings that President Biden gets. He says our government knows. He says our president knows. And he also ended with saying, I'm not going to be in New Jersey this weekend.
So what do you want to know? What do you want the government to tell you and the general public?
I want them to be clear with us. I want transparency. I want them to say these are our assets. There's no need to concern about what's flying. The question should no longer be who's flying these drones or who owns them. It should be what they're looking for. Tell us they're ours. Tell us that they're protecting us, and tell us what the threat is.
Okay, we're coming up on the holidays. Is everybody going to be safe?
I hope so.
What if Elon Musk is doing it just to troll everyone?
What do you want people to do if they see them?
That's a great question. So we've been told that pilots out of Newark Airport are getting hit with lasers. You cannot take the law in your own hands. We do not want you shooting at them. It is a federal offense to shoot on an aircraft. Drones are considered aircraft. And please do not try and hit them with lasers. Our pilots are being distracted.
So you think they're American, they're our government, and they're looking for something that went missing that could be very dangerous?
Absolutely.
All right, Mayor, you got to keep us in the loop here.
Absolutely.
Because we haven't heard any of this stuff in New York.
Absolutely.
This is good, credible
good information.
stuff. It's
Yes.
good, credible information.
Yeah.
And it's all verified and comes based, everything that I based my opinions on come from my briefings that I've gotten.
Okay, Joe Rogan actually asked a Navy pilot about this. I haven't listened to this. I searched the transcript of this episode for cuss words. There was none in the transcript, but last time I did that, they still cussed a few times. So if there's foul language, a lot of it, I'll turn it off. But typically we don't play things with curse words in it. I apologize in advance if that happens. I did search it and nothing came up, but that just means maybe the transcript didn't pick it up correctly if it is in there.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
So, I've had the privilege of interacting with a lot of government organizations over the past few years as I've been digging down this rabbit hole. Law enforcement at a federal level, DOD, executive branch, legislative branch, and some of the folks that I've come in contact with, they specifically work on weapons of mass destructions. Okay, so that's their job. So if there's a loose nuke in the United States, among other agencies, they would be some of the people that would be sitting in a skiff for 24 hours a day trying to figure out where it is and to go get it, right? So you can imagine that would be their number one priority, right? So I engage with these folks. I ask them, what's the sense here? People are kind of starting to panic a little bit, and this message is getting out there more and more broadly. And they assured me that's not the case, that there is not a loose nuke or other type of weapon of mass destruction that these objects, whatever they are pursuing right now. Otherwise, they would be working in a skiff nonstop to make that go away, that problem go away. So, that's part of why I have a high confidence level that this is not a response to a massive imminent, weapons of mass destruction threat on the eastern seaboard. So I just want to try to dispel that rumor right now. I've seen a lot of talk of that online. And I don't, although this is I think a dangerous and scary situation that's going on right now, at least from that particular angle, that's not the indications I'm receiving.
So how would they persuaded you? Just by saying that's not the case? Or have they given you any information that leads to this conclusion? Like,
they would be the people actively working it, essentially, right? So,
and they're not
working it. Right. So either the government is holding back that secret from the direct resources within the government that are responsible for finding these systems, or they're not working the issue because there's an issue there to work.
So the thing that I had heard was that it was a missing nuke from Ukraine. And
how many of you think it could be a missing nuclear bomb that, because you guys saw Vladimir Zelensky over here autographing bombs with Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago.
If that was the case, what could they do? Is there any truth to this idea that we have the type of drone capability that we could send these things out and they would search for gamma radiation and they'd be able to find a nuke? Is that?
So there are teams that respond to those types of potential emergencies, typically within the Department of Energy. Having potentially hundreds of drones flying around trying to identify these isn't necessarily the best way. Gamma radiation is typically well shielded in weapons. And at very high altitudes or even moderate altitudes, like we're seeing these objects, it would be pretty difficult to detect them. And the way that NIST, the DOE typically operates in this environment is ground-based teams.
So he's basically saying if it is going after the missing, nuclear fluids that New Jersey mayor was saying, it wouldn't be like this kind of a situation. It wouldn't be from drones
searching for radiation itself. So it's not necessarily consistent with how they would do it to begin with. And then based off of that other information, that's what leads me to believe that's not the case.
Well, that makes me feel better because I was freaking out this weekend.
I think a lot of people were.
Yeah, I got a couple, but it's one of those things, especially in this day and age with social media. There's so many narratives that get spread and retweeted. And, I know a guy who's an insider and he says to get out of the East Coast and, head for Nevada or, there's a lot of that shit going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different versions of these drones. And this is what's weird. If they weren't ours, if they're not ours, you would think that they could just track them and find out, well, where are they landing? Who's got them? How are they being used? Is it RFI, like radio frequency? Is it some sort of a different technology that's allowing them to pilot these things? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
They'd be able to tune into that and figure it out, right? So how come no one's been arrested? How come no one's been caught? How come they haven't, tracked these things down to the source?
Yeah, so there's a lot of good questions there. Let me back up by starting with the fact that this started about 2 years ago, at least. So
but not like this.
A little bit like this.
Really?
So,
in this volume?
not in this volume. That's the differentiator right there. But so Langley Air Force Base, you might be familiar with the fact that they had drone incursions of an unknown type, unknown origin last year.
Right.
That happened during about a 2.5-3 week period right before Christmas. Right where we are now. That also happened the year before over Langley. Unknown objects operating over the base. They couldn't tell where they were going. They were unprepared for them. Same period of time, 2-3 weeks before Christmas. This is year 3, right? And they were expecting them to come again for third year in a row over Langley. And there was, some effort put forward to be able to better understand these when they came back. And they did come back, but they came back in a much wider swath, right? Now we have them all over New Jersey, all the way up to Massachusetts. And it's hard to tell exactly with the quality of the reporting right now, because it seems to be, the bigger the story gets, the more people are just looking up and seeing anything and pointing it out. But there are reports from Texas to Florida to California, Ohio, Minnesota, Pennsylvania. I mean, it's not just New Jersey itself, it seems. And even the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was shut down for a drone incursion just this last Friday, a couple of days ago. So this isn't just a one-off event. It is in the sense that it's so large and so many people are paying attention to it. But this has been occurring for at least 3 years around military bases. And that's nothing to say with the incidents that we were seeing over the Eastern Seaboard and other training ranges that fighter pilots were seeing as they were doing their operations. So I'm a little hesitant to link it to the full story that we've been having here, this full conversation, but at least for 3 years, this has been occurring. So, kind of getting back to your question, why can't we do more about it? It's a hard problem, I think, for a number of reasons. It's hard, but it's very solvable, right? I think this can be solved. We can solve it. But right now, kind of the word on the street is that these objects appear to be coming from over the ocean. There's senior congressmen, there's Coast Guard personnel, there's law enforcement that are seeing a large number of these come from somewhere over the ocean. I don't know if that means necessarily they're popping out of the water physically, or if they're coming from some unknown location in the water and then proceeding over the coast. I don't know how that relates to Ohio. That's a pretty long trip if they are coming over the ocean. And from the videos I've seen and the conversation I've had, they are detecting these objects through kind of normal mechanisms like radar systems, optical camera systems. They are flying very low. In some cases, they seem to be operating as a group in the vicinity of each other, flying past each other, flying very up close to each other, and then proceeding to do whatever they are that they're doing. It's an unknown right now if they are emitting energy or not. So, like radio communications or their own maybe active sensor systems, it's unknown. I've poked on that front, and the best I can tell, the government doesn't know either.
That seems so weird that they don't know that. Like, it's just very disturbing that someone could operate these things and have, how many, what is the estimated
I think that's the most disturbing part of all of this.
number of them?
That's a great question. At this point, I'm comfortable making a guess of probably over 800 or 1,000. And how many of those are sightings of the same object? How many of those are individual objects? How many of those are unique objects?
Right.
So it's tough to say, but this isn't just a few objects that people are seeing. And so I can imagine some technologies that will allow traditional UAVs or drones to operate without emitting, right? So they could have a self-contained navigational system, right? Maybe they have their own onboard maps and they're using cameras to map where they are.
So then they would be completely autonomous. You just send them out there and they would have a task and they would go through whatever their task is and navigate via their GPS or whatever tracking system they're using.
Exactly. And then, what is their task, right?
Right.
Is it just to instill panic and fear? Is it because they're sensing something? And if they are sensing something, they would have to be using what's called passive sensors, right? So like a camera system is passive, but if you're shooting a radar out and having it bounce off of something, that's active, right? And that's easier to detect than a passive system. So I could imagine.
Put a 1 in the chat if you think it's our government drones. Put a 2 in the chat if you think it's something nefarious.
Imagine, a fully self-contained autonomous drone system that is doing something potentially with passive sensors that allows it to operate without emissions, which is going to make it harder to track.
If they're doing it at night, if they do have passive systems like some sort of an optical system, wouldn't that be hindered by the low light conditions, or do we have stuff that is able to detect whatever they're looking for at night?
Yeah, depends what they're looking for. But ultimately, there is tech. There's electro-optical systems. There's infrared camera systems, not unlike the jets or the systems that we had on my jet. But we were able to detect these objects with infrared when we were flying off the Eastern Seaboard. There are a number of reports from law enforcement that their infrared systems are not able to pick these objects up. And not just this year, but also the incidents over Langley last year. The pilots that responded to that incident, I've spoken to them, they weren't able to lock these up with their infrared systems either. So they do seem to be exhibiting some type of signature management.
That's interesting. So is the signature management so is it a heat signature that they're giving off? So maybe there's some sort of a cooling mechanism inside of these things? Like how, if they have a propulsion system, so you would imagine it's some sort of an electric engine, right? Because a lot of them are very quiet. That's got to be giving off some kind of heat, right?
Yeah, and that goes to some like very base physics, right? Like we create heat whenever we have, stored energy and we utilize it. So to be able to mitigate that to such a degree that you can't even detect them at all, it's pretty tough. I mean, I can imagine you can reduce your signature. We do it in fighter jets, right? Through kind of just like baffles where we cover the engine essentially to make it harder to see. But to have zero ability to detect or lock onto these objects is not a technology I'm familiar with.
So other than that, are they exhibiting any type of movement that's extraordinary, or their ability to turn angles? Is there anything about them that points to this being superior technology?
It's tough to say based on what I've seen just in the public from reports and kind of amateur photographers and witnesses. Some of them do seem to be making pretty sharp turns. I wouldn't call them like physics breaking turns, but they don't seem to be operating like a normal aircraft, right? So they're down low. They're making what appear to be pretty high G turns, maybe like 3, 4, 5 G turns at relatively low air speeds, which is indicative of them having a pretty significant power supply, right? Anytime you turn like that, you're burning energy essentially. So for them to be able to make these high G maneuvers and then remain in the area for another 5 or 6 or 7 hours and still have the battery life or whatever's propelling them to then go over the ocean to a point where they're untrackable. Again, I'm not really familiar with that type of capability either.
Yeah, it's the thing that disturbs me is not just that this is happening. There's so many drones and all these people are seeing them. It's happening for so long and nothing has been done. There's no, they're not scrambling jets to try to meet these things and follow them and track them. They're not shooting them down. They're not. It's just we appear so vulnerable because of this. Mm-hmm. Because if these are,
we appear incredibly vulnerable. That's the bad part.
Ours, or if these are people just fucking around and it's not a threat. Okay, great.
Sorry, I searched that word. I didn't hear him say it. Naomi said, I'm so sorry to hear about Catherine. She'll be in my prayers. Hope everyone is well. I know I talked to her on the phone yesterday and prayed with her. She's definitely in a lot of pain. Rebecca, definitely ours, but still don't trust them. Jennifer says, love you, sweet cat. Joy, your presence is missed. Becky, Amy, thank you guys. Kami, appreciate your support. Lara Trump also making a statement today. I wanted to show that to you. She snaps on government lies about the New Jersey drone. She said they've been lying to us about everything. It's frightening to know that we have car-sized drones flying above us. They can't even be honest about the things we see with our own eyes. It's outrageous.
Right now, careful shooting these drones down. Now I'm seeing videos of people shooting at the drones. Maybe don't shoot the drones. I don't know. What are these things? Laura Trump, you have existed inside of like the government's protection bubble. You've seen the full capacities of the federal government and the way that they can protect our skies and our borders and our land and our sea. And it's obvious that this isn't a foreign power that's sending this stuff over, because that would be like an act of war. So it's become quite clear. And your father-in-law said yesterday, the government is doing this and they're lying to the American people. What do you think is going on?
Yeah, well, and he said yesterday as well, yeah, they know exactly what's going on. They know where it started, where it took off. They know where it went, and they know where it ended up. And I mean, you're right. I have seen the inside of this to some extent. You mentioned Eric and I had Secret Service protection for 4.5 years. I've seen, the inside of the apparatus from the perspective of a family member of a president. And there's no doubt that we have the best and the brightest in the United States military and all the protective services offered to a president and a first family. And there's no doubt they know what this is. And I think that's what's frustrating to the people of this country. Why can't you just be honest with us? But Benny, they've been lying to us.
You guys know full good and well, if Donald Trump was in office, he would be forthright.
about everything. Remember when they told us that inflation was transitory? Remember when they told us that Joe Biden was fit as a fiddle, running circles around the interns at the White House? Nothing to see here, folks. Remember when they lied about the origins of COVID-19? They have lied and lied and lied and lied to the American people. And it's one of the big reasons I think so many people came out and voted for Donald Trump, because they're like, look, maybe I don't love the delivery method every single time from Donald Trump, although I do personally. I think it's fantastic. But he's going to tell you the truth and he's going to give it to you straight. And that is all people want at the end of the day. Man, it's frightening to know that we have car-sized drones flying around up above us. Nobody can give us any real explanation for it. I think you're right. I think there's something being hidden. I think ultimately we'll find out what it is, but it is terrible that we cannot trust our federal government. Our taxpayer dollars are going to pay these people's salaries. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, they can't even be honest with us about things we see with our very eyes every single day, Benny. It's outrageous.
I continue to remind the chat that this is how we found out about the Chinese spy balloon. Not because of the government,
Right.
Not because the government notified us the first time they caught this Chinese spy balloon, but because some dude was there with a telescope. Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, exactly. And it was flying over military bases.
Right.
It was flying over our nuclear sites. This is the kind of thing that make the American people a little bit concerned. And don't forget, nothing happened with that. Remember, they just were like, yeah, so it's floating across the country. No.
Rebecca makes a great point. Like, how about just tell us that you have it under control? That would make us feel better. And they don't. They're just creating speculation. Appreciate that. And Naomi, you said, glad to be back. We missed you. You've been with us 35 months. Congratulations.
Oh, biggie, guys, nothing to see here. When was Xi Jinping ever questioned about that? When was he ever asked, hey, remember the spy balloon you sent over? What kind of intel did you guys get? And what are you going to do with that information? Everybody just, you know what, look the other way, nothing to see here. It's very frustrating to understand that we have a government operating this way. These are people who are supposed to be in positions of power to protect us, to ensure our safety, to ensure that the adversaries out there and the enemies out there are planning something nefarious. And unfortunately, I think more often than not, people are like, yeah, there's probably going to be something bad that happens by way of China or Iran or the terrorist regimes that have built themselves back up thanks to the vacuum left in the Middle East by the Biden exit from Afghanistan. People are concerned, and rightly so, but I have good news, because 35 days from now, ladies and gentlemen, Daddy's home. He's coming back in. He's taking things over, and he's cleaning up the mess. His name's Donald Trump.
His name is Donald J. Trump.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports?
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows.
And that says a lot. That was President-elect Trump weighing in on these mysterious drones. This as lawmakers get set for a briefing on the matter by intel agencies, and that is expected to happen just moments from now. Jennifer Griffin is live at the Pentagon. She's got more on this for us. Jennifer, what has the reaction been so far from the Pentagon?
Well, Sandra, the Pentagon says it has tracked these drone sightings and found that most, if not all, are benign. In a joint statement last night, DHS, FBI, the FAA, and DOD say the number of drones in the air are not new, adding there are more than 1 million drones lawfully registered with the FAA in the United States, and there are thousands of commercial, hobbyist, and law enforcement drones lawfully in the sky on any given day.
As you saw in the joint statement last night from 4 different federal agencies, our assessment to date, based on the information that we've seen, the people we've talked to, the tips we've corroborated, this is lawful, legal aviation activity, manned and unmanned, drones, civil aviation. We've seen nothing that leads us to a different conclusion.
Quote, we assess that the sightings to date include a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, and law enforcement drones, as well as manned fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters, and stars, mistakenly reported as drones. We have not identified anything anomalous and do not assess the activity to date to present a national security or public safety risk over the civilian airspace in New Jersey or other states in the Northeast. That's from that letter from those 4 agencies last night. So far, there have been 5
I think when 4 agencies are coming together, making a joint statement, that's clearly gaslighting. Somebody needs to call it out. And that's what we are here for. And it's what Becky appreciates. She said, Tyler, we get more truth from your channel than the government. And Debbie says, yeah, true, Becky. That is just the case, I feel, too. It's like the government's actually lying and gaslighting us right now.
5,000 alleged drone sightings reported to the FBI. The Pentagon says only about 100 are deemed credible enough to investigate. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, had to shut down its airspace for 4 hours on Saturday to investigate.
We had 5,000 sightings, right? So maybe 12 people see the same aircraft. That's 12 different sightings that we have to work through. It doesn't mean 12 different aircraft. There was a story a couple of days ago about a Coast Guard cutter seeing like 30 or 40 drones following it. We did the forensics on that. It turns out it was air traffic going into JFK International Airport and not drones at all.
In September of 2023, Sandra, the FAA changed the rules so that drones could fly at night. DHS says that may be one of the reasons why now people are seeing more drones than they did before, especially from dawn to dusk. Sandra?
Yeah, but I guess the question then becomes, why do those drones need to be flying at night? And I know one of our upcoming guests is going to address just that. Jen Griffin on that for us. Thank you so much.
I mean, this is insane. Let's see what Patrick Bet-David said.
The president is being asked about drones. His response made me think about something. I want you to watch President's body language here when he's being asked about drones. You know his language when he's playful. You know his language when he's having fun. You know his language when he's prepared for tough questions. None of those body language are you going to feel here. But I want you to watch this, not from what he's saying. Watch his mannerisms and tell me, if you're a poker player, what vibe does he have? Rob, if you can play, again, it's about drones. Watch this clip. Go for it, Rob.
Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Being
Can you
friendly.
comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey and ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening.
Watch his body language.
Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster.
Will you
Want to
shoot
know
them
the
down?
they're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster.
He's talking to somebody.
I've decided to cancel my trip.
He's talking to somebody.
briefing on
Was
the
that
drones?
Howard Lutnick? I don't want to comment on that.
You can
you
pause
been
it.
regular?
You can pause it right there. Okay, so mannerisms. You know what vibe it gives me? Here's a vibe it gives me. When you're selling a business and the buyer agrees to buy it at a price and you're selling it, we've been through this process, you're raising money, you're doing all this stuff, we've done it many times. But when you're selling a business and it's going through the 90-day process, the 6-month process, whatever it is, the seller is never convinced that it's going to be done until the money hits the account. The feeling you have is, what if? What if the lawyer screwed up? What if last minute they try to change the price? What if some surprise comes? Because the buyer's job is to pay as little as possible for anything they're buying, right? So there's a little bit of games going on. The feeling I get when I watch this here with his interview is I have a feeling some people on the inside have reached out to him and spoken to him that you and I don't know that, but a lot of people are going to Mar-a-Lago, and he knows some stuff, but obviously he can't give those names. And those people have probably also said, don't say anything. When you come in, we're going to work on it together. But he also seemed a little bit paranoid between now and January 20th. Like, listen, don't over-celebrate. Don't be anything until we get in. We got to get in. There was some feeling of that I felt here, that maybe they're using this as a tactic to get something through. You have to, it could be 20.
Do you guys think that's true, that like there could be some kind of coup to prevent Donald Trump from going into office? Feels pretty conspiratorial, but Debbie Campbell says he's right. By the way, Debbie Campbell's been a member for 37 months. That's over 3 years she's been with the Feller family.
30%, 40%, but it could be something there. I'm watching this guy named Chase Hughes, who is a U.S. Navy intelligence chief. I'll share with you what breakdown he gave. But before I go to it, very interesting what he said that you got to think about this here. But Tom, what are your thoughts when you're following this drone story? Anything new you're hearing or reading about?
Yeah, I've got two things that line up with you. Number one, if this was really a threat and you had somebody right at our back door there, those drones would be taken out. I mean, the Chinese balloon went on for a little bit, and then the Biden administration couldn't handle it any further, and they shot the balloon down. Then there was another one that like popped and landed in the ocean or something, right? Yeah. So step one, if this was really bad and really a threat, these would be gone. Step two, the government is always doing things trying to move us into a position. Look at what came out just this week, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, on January 6th. Oh, there was 26, 27 guys there that were facilitating. Oh, the rest of the footage did show them just opening doors. Yet the narrative they ran through the news media was something completely different. Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is military testing. This is military. We know what's going on.
Why, though? Why? Huh? That's the question.
Well, look, I mean, why did it Edwards Air Force Base? We were in Southern California, Pat. We talked about it in the last podcast. And people in Tehachapi, California City, and Mojave, which are the cities, if anybody looks on a map, are all surrounding Edwards Air Force Base. And Edwards Air Force Base was down the street from this thing in Burbank called the Skunk Works. And the Skunk Works is where they made these really secret, elaborate planes.
Burbank, Tom?
Yeah, and they flew them and they transport them on covered trucks and everything at midnight and took them out to Edwards, and people would see it all the time, and they never told us in Southern California. Mm-hmm. People talked about these sonic bats. There was a F-22 fighter. There was the stealth fighter flying around at Mach 2 or something. So I believe there's military testing going on, and they don't want to talk about it, but they want to kind of move the public's fear into area, because what do? How do you get things done? Take advantage of a crisis, or maybe make some uncertainty, or make some crisis?
Bingo, Vinny. What do you think?
That's what I think.
I both of you, great freaking points. And and mind you, everything that's going to come out of my mouth is my opinion, because I've been doing like you. I've been getting, rabbit holes, but I've been getting all this information. The fact that they're going out at night, all these drones. Well, let's take a step back. The fact that John Kirby, okay, who's in the lack of intelligence community, him and Mayorkas, they're like, no, nobody's reporting anything. That's complete. They're lying. Okay, I just sent Rob a video of the mayor of Jersey today going, I think this is military. So either A, they're in on it. They're definitely keeping something from us, okay? Because some of the reports that I heard, I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was Tom in September, reports that 9 surface-to-air missiles were smuggled, possibly Iran, who knows the truth, were smuggled into the U.S. via Mexico to target Trump's plane, okay? Shout out to Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas, that little rat who you guys know that I love. They've been, I think, 2 possibilities. They've kept the border wide open to get all the illegals in, all the votes, all the everything. It failed, but
that's exactly what I was saying.
For the future elections are going to be okay. They might have messed up and let in something that they're looking for right now. You know what the fall of Soviet Union
might?
Yeah, might. Yeah, no.
What about the guy you called out who said, you don't know who I am, but you will?
Oh, yeah. You mean the known terrorist? Remember that guy?
The guy from Azerbaijan.
He's like, soon you will know my name.
Guy,
well, maybe we might be getting that guy. So they leave the border wide open for the votes. And then all of a sudden, the fall of Soviet Union, how many nuclear tactical nukes have gone missing? I've heard reports that maybe one of these things made it to the United States. And the reason these drones are going at night is because they're trying to detect.
Is that what John Ferguson said?
I think he did, because that at night, the drones could look at radiation and it doesn't come through during the day. And then you have to ask, the real question is this: do you believe that they did it by accident because of the votes? Or do you believe this is all a fear thing, an attack, or something's going to happen? We're talking about the Black Swan event before January 20th. Because let's not forget, guys, he's still a threat. There's less than 40 days left. They tried everything to destroy him. They shot him in his head. I wouldn't be surprised if something crazy happens before that day to stop it.
Adam.
That's just my opinion.
So 3 things. Let's start with Trump, number 1. So you said only the paranoid survive, which we say all the time, by the way. Also, the future looks bright. You know, in the NFL, sometimes when you have like a breakaway touchdown and the guy's running and he's just sort of lollygagging, he has, and at the 1 yard line, he kind of drops the ball,
fumbles
right before the end zone because he thinks he's in there home free, and then it comes back to a safety. That's what Trump hopefully
it's
is
the style
not
drop,
doing
right?
whatsoever right now, because we're about 35 days
34
until
days.
Unbelievable until this. So yes, you know, it's so interesting about the fact that he won't go to Bedminster. He won't say that, because a few months ago when he was shot in the face and they put a glass cage around him and they said, listen, don't get out of the cage. What did he do the first time he was in there?
He went to go help a lady.
He went to go help a lady that fell down. It's like, get back in the cage, Trump.
Yeah.
What are you doing? But here's a guy who we had a conversation. Should he stop golfing during the election season, during everything that was going on? I was like, don't go on a golf course, buddy. They're coming to get you, clearly. So who knows what's going on here? So even Trump, in this regard, is saying, I'm not going to Bedminster. One more thing.
One more clip I want to show you. This
We're
is
joined
the
now by
White
top White
House
House
making
Security-
a bogus statement, and the man who had to pay Donald Trump $15 million on the left, George Stephanopoulos, for lying about him. Linda Carlino, you said made it back. Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Spokesman John Kirby. John, welcome back. What's your response to President-elect Trump?
We are being honest and transparent with the American people, George, about what we're learning. As a matter of fact, just last night, after days of going through the various tips, days of looking at analysis, days of increasing our detection capabilities, including visual observers on the ground, we assess that these drones, these aircraft people are seeing, are a mix of law enforcement drones, commercial drones, and hobbyists. We continue to see nothing that indicates a public safety risk or a national security risk.
But how do you explain why people seem to be seeing so many more of them right now?
It's difficult for me to know exactly why, George, but I would give you a couple of thoughts here. Number one, there's just an awful lot of drones in the sky. I mean, there are 1 million drones registered with the FAA here.
The drones that are in the sky are not like the normal drones. That's what is driving people so mad about this. They're like orbs floating around. You guys know exactly what we're talking about. The fact that he's just like, oh, this is just normal drones, just a little more than normal.
Here in the United States, and thousands upon thousands fly in our skies legally and lawfully every single day, doing all kinds of good things for the public good. And the Northeast Corridor is one of the busiest, you know, and also the sun's going down a lot earlier now. The winter's upon us and people can look up and see things. But I would remind people, when you look at these images, these videos, they have navigation lights on them. They're seeing them because these drones, these aircraft are operating the way the FAA requires them to operate in U.S. airspace so that they can be observable and to fly safely.
So nothing more needs to be done?
I think there's definitely more needs to be done, George, and particularly on authorities. I mean, what we are learning from this experience, or actually I say not learning new, I mean, relearning.
This guy's a doofus. I can't even watch him. Let's listen to what Chris Cuomo says.
Let's bring in Republican Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett, friend of show, and Professor Dakota Rudisill. And you can tell me if I mangled your name. I do it all the time. Professor, how do I say your name the right way?
You nailed it. Rudisill.
30 years studying nuclear weapons, work in Homeland Security, understands, okay? First of all, let's start on the political. And Professor, you listen to what I hear from Tim. If you got any questions, let me know. Representative, I have it right that there's a classified briefing, right? Why do you guys need one if there's nothing to see here?
There was a classified briefing last week. I didn't go to it, Chris, because and thank you for having me back on, brother.
Of course.
They bring you into the briefing and then you can't talk about it. And if you do, you can be brought up on charges. And even if it's something you already know, which you and I think I know what's going on with some of this. I don't think they're sniffing out nuclear stuff. I don't blame that guy for saying that. Everybody's got a theory on it. My guys down at my Liars Club, coffee club every Saturday morning, they've got a theory on it too. But the reality is, I think it's a combination of everything. If I could go into that, is that all right?
You use the time as you want, sir. You serve the people.
Brother. Well, I think you've got a combination of things going on. You've got some copycats, but I do think the Chinese are using this. They have componentry and everything we've got. The camera that's filming me right now is Chinese. They have they have their componentry in our fighter pilots. And there was a report out a while back, and it's been talked about a lot that they're afraid they could have the capabilities of even turning off some of our jets if we were to get into a conflict with them. I don't know if they're behind 100% this, but they are monitoring this. You remember that Chinese spy balloon?
Weather balloon.
Yeah. That thing flew over the Aleutian Islands, came down, went across the country, transversed, turned directions, came back around, took in Oak Ridge National Laboratory in my backyard there in Tennessee, did everything. Then they shot it down off the coast of Myrtle Beach. Now, the Chinese are cold and calculated. They look at everything that we do. They monitor every movement. They're monitoring. And on that thing, they didn't really have to do much spying because, honestly, they've got people in our colleges and universities. They had a member of Congress had a relationship with a known spy. You had a known spy that was a driver for a U.S. senator for 10 years, for goodness sakes. So I think what they're monitoring is our response. And you are correct. We are going to end up moving on off this thing, and then something's going to happen major because of these drones, because we are not paying attention to it. And I firmly believe that the Chinese are monitoring this. They have componentry in these things. They know where they are. They know what's going on, and they are watching our political reaction, our military reaction, and just our press reaction to this thing. And for our White House to kind of poo-poo it, to me, sends the wrong message. I think you should take the American public serious. They're concerned about this. New Jersey I know a bunch of folks up there in New Jersey since I've been in Congress. They talk funny, but they're good folks. And that was one of the most compliant areas during COVID, if you remember. But these folks are not compliant about these drones. They're incredibly heightened about it, and they should be. So, and that's basically it. That's what I think it is. So
well,
they've got.
I don't want you to tell us what you hear. I don't want to tell us what we hear tomorrow, because I don't want you to be thrown in jail. But hopefully,
I probably won't even go. I probably won't even be invited to this one. They usually tell me about 15 minutes before these things. They usually don't want people like myself in those meetings.
I hope if you get information, you're able to use it at least to protect the people who voted for you. Now, Professor, first of all, let me just tell you, Dakota, he really does believe he doesn't have an accent. So what he said about the New Jersey, he actually believes it. Just so you know, I've worked. I'm just telling you, he believes it, but don't judge him by that on everything else he said. Everything else you can take seriously. Now, Dakota, people are looking and saying, they're obviously pretending that they don't see what we see. So maybe that's because they're so frightened by what is actually happening here, which is military aircraft, drones, manned or unmanned, looking for this nuclear material that went missing. And we saw the report that a Cat 3 material went missing from some truck or something in transport. And that's what they're looking for in Jersey. Nukes.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. So this has all just kind of reminded me a little bit of the flying saucer scares in the 1950s. But we're in a different technological age, and there are these drones around, right, that were not around before. And we also have the heritage of the Cold War with the nuclear arsenals that were built then, and smaller arsenals are around today. And obviously, radiological materials are part of our lives in medical settings and other settings. So looking at this document from the New Jersey EPA, it looks like basically what they're saying is that there was a small component from a medical scanner which uses germanium-68, which is a radiological material. But this small item has gone missing in transit. If you read the document itself, it underscores very, very clearly that there's minimal health risk from this. So just based on that document, I wouldn't be concerned about a risk to the public. And frankly, I wouldn't connect that up with the drones at all. There are no facts I've seen in the public record that would suggest that there's some sort of search underway for this piece, this component from some.
Well, I was kind of banking on that being the theory. Apparently, it is not the theory. So I don't know what the theory is. I'm going to stay tuned to it. I think they should come out and say it. By the way, last chance for you to send a super sticker or a super chat. Thank you, Linda Carlino, Mish Michelle, and Amy Heights. I'm going to pray for our nation and for all of you real fast. Lord, we trust you with our nation. We trust you with this drone situation. And for everybody feeling fear or anxiety right now, I just declare in the name of Jesus, they would begin to sense and feel peace rushing over them. Lord, we thank you for Donald J. Trump being elected to office and the fact that he's going to be sworn in just a short number of days. Lord, I pray that you protect him. And Lord, we pray for Joe Biden and his family as they're going to have to try to figure out what they're going to do for the rest of their days. And Lord, I pray that they would consecrate themselves to you and become fully devoted followers of Jesus. And so we bless them, and I bless our time together. I bless everybody in the chat in Jesus' precious name. Amen, amen, amen. Now, one of the things, guys, that I think is unfair about some of what we're seeing with this whole drone situation is that several people are reporting drones and orbs, and they're flying in patterns. In fact, there's one video that I wanted to show you guys that it's like the statements that they're making just aren't making sense because it was like a drone time lapse. Let me see if I can find that time lapse. And then we're going to be over with the stream. Here it is. Okay, look at this drone time lapse that I'm about to put on the screen, and you guys will see that this drone time lapse is clearly, these are clearly coordinated drones flying together on a mission in the same direction. I mean, look at that. So for them to say like, oh yeah, it's just normal drones don't fly in a pattern together like this. I mean, look at that. So I'm going to keep my eyes and ears peeled. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again very, very soon.